Hey, it's the Profit Answer Man, Rocky Lalvani. If you're new to the podcast, check out my interview with Mike Michalowicz. It's episode number 2. If you want to hear about each chapter in the Profit First book, go back and listen to episodes 3 through 13. Episode 1 is the why and how. On the Profit Answer Man, we learn money mastery without all the complicated accounting mumbo-jumbo using a simple system. Your accountant is busy documenting your transactions and creating a rearview mirror of what happened. My guess is you don't even look at the reports they sent you. If you're like most business owners, you struggle with this, and it's not your fault. We aren't taught money in school, and accountants aren't taught how to be profitable. The Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz works, and he certified me to help you implement the system in your business. Remember, the new equation is sales minus profit equals expenses. Let's face it, without cash flow, you can't pay your employees, buy needed materials, or pay your mortgage and support your family. I help you to do that and more, so you can focus on the parts of the business you love and receive the rewards for your labor and investment into your business. The stronger you are as a business owner, the more jobs you create, the better we are as a country. Small business owners are the backbone of America, and for that, you deserve to be well rewarded. Just remember, more revenue does not equal more profit. That's why we focus on the bottom line. Today, we're going to chat about scaling a business and how to do it the right way. People don't realize that growing too fast is a major reason businesses fail. There's a few reasons around this. Number one, it takes a lot of cash to fund the growth. And depending on how you get that cash and what your lender thinks, they may pull back your loans if you grow too fast. I know this sounds counterintuitive, but they look at this from a risk standpoint. And growth causes risks to the balance sheet, and that's where they freak out. The second problem is small mistakes and issues turn into massive issues when you grow. You screw up an order when you're small, and maybe it's 5 items. When you're large, you now made a mistake on 500 items, and that gets expensive. So you need to create strong, well-built systems in your business. Jeff is going to share how to do that. He says most entrepreneurial business leaders are experts in their field, but struggle when it comes to the complexities involved in scaling their business, with less than half of these businesses surviving for more than 5 years. As a business transformation coach, Jeff Chastain works with business leaders and their leadership teams with 2 goals in mind. First, to help them get clarity in their business, and second, to help them get more of what they want out of their business. Let's meet Jeff and learn from him. Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Jeff Chastain. It's great to have you join us today.
Hey, thank you for the opportunity. I always love talking business, so thanks for the chance.
Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business and what you do?
Sure, be happy to. Really, the simplest phrase that I always throw out there is just simply that I work with entrepreneurial business leaders just to help them gain clarity in their business and get more of what they want from their business. So breaking that down a little bit deeper is I coach business owners that are either an early stage entrepreneur all the way up to really small to mid-sized kind of companies there where I'm working with their entire leadership team, but looking at it from a systemization standpoint to take the conceptual idea of a street vending cart, hot dog cart kind of business where everything's run through the owner, everything's managed through them. You got to very, very tightly controlled and saying, okay, let's transition that, let's transform that into more of a restaurant where you think of, okay, the owner's not the one sitting there washing dishes and taking orders up front, that they've got a staff, they've got a front of the house staff, back of the house staff that can truthfully largely run the business without the owner there.
And that's truly when it becomes a fun business, when everything doesn't depend on you, and that requires systems. And I, too, am a person who loves systems. The more we can systematize, the better. And as part of my process of systematizing things, I've even learned to eliminate things. I'm like, we could systematize this, but it provides so little value. We're just going to stop doing it.
Well, there's definitely that. It's interesting. I talk to, especially the creative agencies that I talk to, the marketing or design stuff like that. They always look at me as like, systems. We don't want to do systems. We want creativity here. It's like, no, you put in systems and you get the administrative stuff, all the stuff you don't want to do off your plate, so you can free up the time, free up the mental capacity for the creative aspects. So yeah, it's people view systems differently all across the board, but it's critical to me.
You made two comments in your opening. One, to help businesses get clarity, and then to get them more of what they want out of their business. And when I talk to business owners, those are the two things that are missing. They don't have clarity on what their business is, who they serve, their values, their mission, and having it in such a way that everybody in the company knows it. And then they struggle to get what they want out of their business because they're so stuck in the hamster wheel of things. So being able to help with that is definitely helpful. And I'm sure you probably see the same thing with the people you talk to.
Oh, definitely. And the reality is I've experienced it myself. It's like early on, I did an IT services MSP business, and I did another software as a service business. And as the entrepreneur, as the business owner, you go into it more with the technician kind of mindset of this is my lane of expertise. And all of a sudden you get into it and you start that hamster wheel moving there, and you kind of figure out, wait a minute, there's a whole lot more to business than just being an IT technician or being a lawyer or whatever the case may be. And that's, so your comment about that's where they have fun. It's like they have fun in that early day when it's like, okay, brand new, we're building this thing, we're having fun building it. And then it turns into this phase of just a job. In a lot of cases, it's work right there. And that's when let's systematize it. Let's move it to the next phase where, again, you put the fun right back into it. So it's dealing with that middle phase that honestly everybody has to go through. There's a life cycle to every business. You've got to go through that phase. It's just a question as to how quickly you can go through it and least amount of pain right there.
And if you're in the technician role, you're going to wonder why you have no pricing power most of the time and why you struggle so much. And that is the part that can actually easily put somebody else into the role of technician. It's actually solving the problems for the client and letting them know that, because the client doesn't care about the technician of how they get the result. They just care that you've solved their pain point and you've given them the result.
Yeah, it's to me, it's especially in the tech world. That's where I always get with people. It's like they really don't care whether you're on this cloud provider or that cloud provider or this language or whatever. It's simply from a client perspective, it's the UI, it's the experience I get in using your tool, using your platform. Could care less these days, as long as it's secure. I could care less what happens behind the scenes, as long as it just works for me. And that's, to me, that goes well beyond just an IT firm or whatever there, because I look at it and say, okay, what's the difference between fictional Joe's Burger House and McDonald's? It's like McDonald's, while nobody's going to describe that as high-end dining or anything, it's a very consistent experience. You go in there, you get your Big Mac or whatever, it's always the same price, it's always made the same way, it's quick, it's fast, the kids have fun. That's what you're known for, and you deliver that consistent expertise. To me, that's where the system comes into place. They've got everything systematized, whereas Joe's Burger House over there trying to invent things on his own, come up with things on his own. The grand opening is great. It's the second or third time you go back where things are not working quite as well or whatever. They get your order wrong. They could care less. At that point, it falls off your radar of places I'm going to go eat pretty quickly, but just because they set that bar so high initially of saying, okay, this is the experience we're going to provide you, and then they didn't deliver on it round 2, round 3. Why are we going back there here? Why are we going to keep doing that when we don't know what we're going to get? And that really applies to any business.
You have to set and then meet and exceed expectations, and then all is well. One of the things I've heard you say is that profit is the ultimate number. What did you mean by that?
Well, profit is really, it goes back to Profit First book, but still profit is the final number that says, okay, we're being successful here. And I actually break it down. It's actually part of my whole equation of when I'm working with people. There's 4 different keys to it to say, okay, we've got people, i.e. having the right people, working the right seats kind of a thing. We've got the purpose. Again, you touched on it, having a shared purpose, a common strategy. We know where we're going. The playbook to say, again, going back to McDonald's, everything's delivered in a consistent, repeatable manner. And then performance to say, okay, everybody's actually executing the most efficient way, the right way, things like that. When you combine all those, that's what's really gives you the added profitability of the business. That's going to scale your business. That's going to build the profitability up. But I see too many business owners that talk about revenues and say, hey, we brought in $50 million last year. It's like, well, okay, great. There's a $50 million business out there that's got 50 employees. There's a $50 million business out there that's got 200 employees. One of those is a lot more fun to work with when you've got that bigger profit margin of the 50 million with 50 employees or whatever the numbers are, kind of a thing there. It's the profit margin that really defines, to your point earlier, the fun of the business. You've got it kind of goes back into the second part of my tagline is if you've got that profit, you've got more flexibility. It's more of what you want to do, whatever you want in your business. So you can reinvest it back in, say, okay, more people, more equipment, more efficiency, or it's a payout at the end kind of a thing of, hey, it's an end of your bonus or however you want to spend it, but you've got the ability there to go spend it and reinvest however you want to. And having that matters more than any kind of revenue numbers or anything else, because you can, like I said, you can have great revenues and still be upside down or be nothing to turn around and reinvest.
And there are quite a few businesses like that. I always talk, top line is vanity, right? Bottom line is sanity. Because at the end of the day, it's not how much you bring in, it's how much you keep. Because that is what fuels your growth. That is what allows you to hire A players. That is what allows you to stay in business when COVID gives you, the left hook or whatever in life kind of comes along. When you've got that rock solid foundation financially, everything else is figure-outable and solvable.
Yep.
So let's talk about scaling a business. What are the 4 key pillars to successfully scale?
Well, to me, it's again, I mentioned it just briefly, but it's people, purpose, the playbook, and performance. And it always starts off with people for me, just because honestly, every time I dig into a business or work with a business, there's all kinds of surface level fires. But once you start getting down to the root of really any issue in business, there's always a people issue. It's the, do you have the right person? Do they have the skills? Has their role outgrown them kind of a thing? Is it just a communication issue? Whatever. There's almost always a people issue. So we're always looking at, okay, it's the Jim Collins quote more than anything, right people, right seats kind of a thing, but understanding, okay, what's going on in your team? Your sales team's not meeting its numbers. Why? Is it because they don't have the messaging to get in from a marketing? They don't have the leads getting in? Do they simply not work together? Is the sales manager personality-wise not on the same page with the sales team kind of a thing? And there's so many business owners look at it and say, well, we're just not meeting our numbers. Like, you don't understand the why. So that's really where we got to dig into first and foremost with the people side. And the second piece of it, second pillar there you talked about already, is the purpose side of saying strategy. It's like, great, we've got a great team. If they're all working and pulling in different directions, then we're not going to go anywhere, or at the very least, we're not going to get there very efficiently. So having that unified strategy, it's like I started my career early days. I actually wasn't the entrepreneur type. I started in corporate America. And that was one of the biggest things was I was just sitting there day to day at a desk. It's like, okay, I've got work in front of me, but what does this really matter to anything? How am I contributing to the bigger picture? And you see that still a lot, even with small businesses, if they don't understand what the mission is, what the goals of the company is of, okay, I refer to it as the pinnacle. What's our peak mountaintop that we're aiming at? If you can't see what you're aiming at, you're probably going to miss the target at that point. So it's really having that clearly defined strategy that honestly everybody buys into is the second part of it. And then the third component of it is, like I said earlier, the playbook. And that's to me is going in and making sure that you've got everybody doing the same thing, getting that consistent result right there, that it doesn't really matter. It kind of sounds bad, but it really doesn't matter that if I go swap out line cooks at McDonald's, that Big Mac's still going to come off in the same way. It's still going to be the same lettuce, tomato, whatever kind of a stuff on it. It's still going to come out the same way. And that gives me flexibility, again, in the business to where, hey, if somebody's sick, somebody takes a vacation, somebody leaves, okay, we're still okay. We're not tied to knowledge or expertise that only this one person has or only in their head. So it's really documenting out, building your playbook like you think of a sports team there, that everybody's got their playbook. And when the quarterback and the receiver are not on the same page, not running in the same play, you hear that kind of comment all the time with the commentators, and the ball goes to the other team or the falls to the turf kind of a thing there. It's the same model in business right there, making sure everybody's got that playbook. And then the last piece, like we just talked about again, was just the performance side. It's like, okay, you've got great systems, you got great people, you got great ideas out there, but if they're not executing on it in an efficient manner, in a productive manner, making sure that, okay, everybody's really working on the most important thing for today, not picking their own tasks or whatever out there, then you're going to get a lot more bang out of your investment at that point by saying, okay, everybody's executing together, moving in the right direction, pulling together at that point. So those to me are really the four pillars that go into, honestly, any business. And I have people ask me all the time, it's like, what industry do you work with? It's like, I'll always kind of joke with a client. It's like, don't fire me right off the bat, but I can literally describe your business here in about 30 seconds, that you go out to market, you bring in customers, you deliver a product or service, and hopefully you collect money for it. And that's the rule for any and every business out there. Yeah, you've got some uniqueness, some customization, et cetera, on top of that, hopefully. But it really comes back down to these same four pillars that, okay, you've got people, hopefully you've got a defined strategy, a purpose, a reason for being a company. You need playbook, you need systems, you need performance. That applies to really any company out there.
Out of those four, is there one that always seems to be the problem, or is each business somewhat different, and which of those P's gives them a problem?
I will say I've yet to come across a business that had their personnel, their people 100% in line right there. So I'd say that's always an issue right there. May not always seem like the most critical fire, but there's always a personnel issue. And when I'm talking with early stage businesses, it's more a case of, because in those days, your first couple hires are so critical. If you get that wrong, you can waste a whole lot of time and a lot of resources there. So making sure you're going about those first couple hires, especially once you get outside of the friends and family circle, once you start hiring unknowns, you got to really know what you're hiring, what you're looking for there. So the people, to me, is one of the biggest ones. And then really from a scaling perspective, from a building value perspective, the playbook side is always a challenge to me. And we've actually got putting together a free resource on that one, just because so many people, it's like you've always heard from all the coaches, all the book names out there, whatever, document your processes. And yet so few people actually do it. And the reality is they probably tried and got bogged down, got stuck, and or they really didn't even know where to start in the first place. And I always look at that and say, okay, it's not near that complex, but virtually nobody has processes truly documented out. And when you go to the private equity firm or whatever wants to come in and buy your business, they're going to look at it and say, well, if everything's in your head, your multiplier, your value just fell to the floor at that point. You don't have any real value because as soon as you exit the business, all the knowledge, all the expertise just went with you. So it's to me, it's those two are the ones that stand out most often.
So I tell people it's better to hire for behaviors than skill sets. You can always teach someone a skill set, but if they don't have behaviors that are in line with your kind of culture, you're going to struggle a lot more. Thoughts on that?
I 100% agree on it. Because yes, I agree that culture and the behaviors, the personality of that person most likely will not change. Their skill set can grow, can change, can be taught, things like that. Ideally, obviously, you'd like to have both, but still, no, I would definitely go the culture side first. The challenge then I run into is most people don't know how to identify that or how to evaluate that. And that's why you see so many job board listings or whatever that's just a smorgasbord here of skills kind of a thing. Nobody ever talks about their culture, about the company, about the type of role, anything like that. You got to be a good candidate to sit there and go in and ask those kind of questions, because most of the time it's not visible. They're just sitting there asking you about skills, about your last job experience, things like that. It's like, okay, tell me about what I'm walking into. Tell me about your culture. What's going on here? Because honestly, if I was going out looking for a job these days, I wouldn't want to be one, looking for a job. I want to look for some place that I fit in, that I can contribute, that I can be a part of, not just that I can, whatever the case may be, write a certain language or tally spreadsheets for accounting or whatever the skill set may be. I want to feel like I'm part of a purpose. And to me, that was actually one of the big driving things that drove me out of corporate America. It's like, okay, why am I here? Kind of a question. And I see that still with small businesses, even still.
So I grew up in a different time era, and that was the norm. The norm was you're here because we're a great company and we're going to pay you, and you're lucky to have a job with us.
Yeah.
And today, for the younger generation, they're like, you know what? That's 180 degrees. If I'm not in alignment with what you're doing and I don't believe in who you are and what you do, then I don't want to be part of your team. So I think the world has gotten better in that place. But again, it's like you said, the job descriptions that are out there aren't speaking to that. And so we have a disconnect, unfortunately. And that's probably why certain companies are able to top talent, because they do talk about that and bring that out. Why do people have such a difficult time documenting the processes to get them down and get them running?
No, I think really most of us, and for that matter, even myself being from the IT background back in the day, we're not necessarily the analytical type of really starting to break things down. We just inherently go process the invoices at the end of the month for the clients, kind of a thing there. We don't actually think about, okay, what does this really mean to do this? So it's, like I said, I think I mentioned already, to me, it's always two different things that they struggle with. Is first, okay, where do I even get started? Because you look at your entire day, your week, so many times, I still, even this way kind of a thing, look at it, it's like, okay, I've been extremely busy all day. I don't have a clue what I actually got accomplished or what I really did. And so when you look at it, say, okay, what process, where do I start documenting things? And that just turns into instant paralysis for a lot of people right there. It's like, I don't even know where to start. And then the second part of it is, okay, if I did start somewhere, too many times the mentality is that, okay, I've got to go write this 6-inch thick SOP manual that every little nitpicky detail kind of a thing here. And to me, it's like, one, you're never going to get that written in the first place because it's too complex for you. And two, even if you did get it written, it's going to sit on the shelf and collect dust because your team doesn't want to read it either. So I always look at processes. I describe it kind of an 80-20 approach to say, okay, document the top 20% of that process that gets you 80% of the value. So if you're talking about, it's like take the invoicing kind of example, whatever, I don't need to have written down every single little mouse click or whatever. Open this program, click on this menu, do this kind of a thing. What I want to know from somebody reading that process is, okay, what are the key deliverables? What are the key things that I need to deliver as being part of this process? So, for example, throw it into a sales methodology kind of a thing there. If your key deliverable is what you care about as the owner is going to be the number of new deals, the number of closed deals, or maybe even the profitability of those deals kind of a thing there. If you're sitting there writing metrics or writing processes to tell your team that, okay, you need to make 20 phone calls a day, you need to do X, Y, and Z, what happens when you bring in that sales rep or have that sales rep that doesn't sell well over the phone? They're better at going out and having coffee or having conversations kind of a thing there. What does it really matter to you at that point? If they can still deliver that end result, if they can still hit those top 20 peaks, if this is what's really important to get our product, our service delivered right, what's it matter how you get there? And the reality is they might well be able to bring something more to the table, something more efficient, a different way of doing it to the table that you may not think of. And when you start getting down there and try to micromanage all the details, you're really trying to run that creativity out of your team, and that's not what you want. You don't want a whole team full of robots at that point. You're hiring them for their expertise, their creativity, their knowledge, and so you've got to give them that ability to do that, and honestly make it easier on yourself at the same time in documenting those processes, so you don't have to document them to that level. But yeah, to me that's the two things that really block them, is just knowing where to start and then going way too deep. That it's like, okay, stay at a higher level, keep it at a higher level when you're writing out that process.
And Mike has another book called Clockwork, and it's all about how do you create those systems and processes. And I tell people, especially if it's tech-based, computer-based, rather than saying, click here, do this, just record a video of you doing an invoice. Okay, we're opening up, we use QuickBooks. Here's your QuickBooks. You know, you'll have your own user ID, and here's and then they can watch where the clicks are. And then you tell the employee, hey, if the version changed and this is no longer applicable, I want you to go re-record it and stick it in the folder so that it then becomes a living document on their side, and the next person is available to do that. But that comes back actually to culture. We create a culture of documenting our work because that's fearful to people. If I document this all, you'll fire me and take my intellectual knowledge. And it's not about that. It's about, I can't promote you until I have somebody else to do what you do. So how's the quickest, easiest way to turn that over so that you can move up and better and better jobs?
No, quite true.
So I've got to believe that as a company is a startup and then starts to grow and changes happen, there's probably very differences in leadership mentality and how you have to look at that. What are some of those differences, and what does the owner of the business have to go through to kind of go from that technician to that true kind of entrepreneurial business owner?
Well, and I think you hit it really there, is it's the switch from technician to owner, because a lot of times when they're forming that initial business, when I went into the IT services business with my business partner, we were very focused on, okay, delivering that service. That was our expertise kind of a thing there. And we were initially on the front lines, that first early stages of the business. You're the one out there being the salesperson. You're the one janitor cleaning up the building. You're doing everything there just by necessity there, usually on most entrepreneurial ventures. Most of us don't start out with Shark Tank with $5 million or anything in the pocket. Most of us are starting out here a little bit more lean than that. So we have to do a lot of those things ourselves. And I look at the life cycle of business, and it's honestly, every business goes through the same life cycle regardless of the industry, but you have that early true startup. Most of the time we glorify startup there, but startup to me is really just pure survival. Can I get a product or a service to market, get you to pay me for it before I run out of money? And that's to me, that's startup. That's where everybody struggles. Once you kind of start that hamster wheel, that flywheel moving, get some revenue coming in, get some profit coming in, hopefully, that's kind of the first fun phase of business. And okay, that's the typical what we see on TV or whatever, is the startup that you got Friday happy hours every week kind of thing. You got the ping pong table, whatever. Everybody's having a party all the time. But what the business owner doesn't see at that point, they're saying, hey, this is just going to be fun party all the time. But it's, I forget who I heard say this, but it was story of, hey, you're in the blue widget business kind of a thing here. You're making blue widgets. And you get that phone call here. Everything's going on. You get that phone call and says, hey, so-and-so recommended me to you, saying you're the best widget maker out there. I need some red widgets. Can you make red widgets for me in addition? Because I know you make blue. Can you do red for me as well? And in that mentality, you say yes to everything. So it's, of course, yeah, we can make red. Like, great. Now I need 5,000 red widgets. And you think, well, we've only delivered an order of 100 before, but he wants 5,000. That's 5,000 from a financial standpoint. Okay, of course we can do 5,000. And he said, well, can you also deliver them over to our factory in Germany here next week? It's like, sure. And you hang up the phone and your team looks at you. He's like, what the heck did you just agree to? But the reality is, in those days, it turns into you work all night, work all weekend, whatever, and it turns into kind of the folklore stories of the business as it grows. But as you keep doing that, what the business owner doesn't see is you're adding in a little bit of complexity to the business every single time. It's another custom variation. You bring in another employee where you don't have processes figured out, so they're kind of doing things their way, your way kind of thing. Different customers have different ideas. And before long, that fun party of a business turns into the nightmare, to where we've got the consistency, the quality is going downhill. We're working all the time. I was actually just talking a few weeks ago with an entrepreneur in a marketing agency. It was between them and their business partner. From the outside, very successful business, lots of clients, lots of revenue flowing through. And this individual was ready to quit and get out of business. She's like, I'm working 80 plus hours a week. I'm working 6+ days a week. This is no longer fun. This is a job. This is work kind of thing. I want out of this. And to me, that's the unfortunate side. That's the stories that I really hit me kind of thing. Was like, you've already made it through that initial startup phase. You've got a product, you've got viability, you've got people seeing value in you that you're giving money, but you can't make that hurdle over that second stage of saying, okay, how do we get through from the fun party to systematize, scale, and get back to the fun here? That this individual and many other businesses kind of get lost in that secondary. I heard it described, I forget who it was, but as a whitewater rapids kind of a thing there, that you had the nice smooth current going down the rapid, everything was fun. Then all of a sudden you hit the rocks and the waterfall, and at best you're just sitting there trying to keep everybody on the boat and not get tossed overboard kind of a thing as you're going through that phase. And if you can make it through that, then there's smooth, calm waters again on the other side because you've got the business systematized. But it's getting through that because everybody has to go through it. Like I said earlier, it's just a matter as to how quickly you can go through it and how much you can pre-plan and make that transition easy. But you've got to go through that phase of saying, okay, this has got to be more than just me and more than what's in my head, and really make the transition to say, even if you're not trying to scale the company out and grow it, a systematized business is still a whole lot more fun to run, more efficient to run, more profitable to run than just the fly by the seat of your pants type operation.
You know, even within some of the things that I do, I've created my own systems and checklists, because what I find is when I only do something once in a while, and once in a while might be once a week, I don't always remember everything. I'm like, did I do this? Did I do that? What was I supposed to do this? And I'm stuck in a thinking circle, right? I found if I just created the checklist, then when it came time to do that item, I literally opened up my checklist and I go, click, 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 click. I'm done in 3 minutes. I know it was done properly. And I don't have this open loop in my head going, did I miss something? Was I supposed to do something? Did I forget to do this? And so it's been helpful even just for myself to have steps of what to do, because then I don't have to constantly think, which eats up half my time of not taking action.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier about the creative marketing agency or whatever. They're usually one of the ones that push back on processes the most often. It's like, we're a creative agency. We don't need processes. It's like, no, if you could proselytize, what's the right word there? But basically put a process around your client onboarding, your client invoicing stuff that is just honestly flat out administrative work, then that frees up exactly what you're talking about, the mental capacity now to go do the creative side. You don't have to put a process around graphic design on a logo or whatever, but if you can put processes around other aspects, and that's actually one of the ways I teach people to figure out which processes to document, is to figure out of everything you've got going on, what are those things that honestly you're not very good at and you don't like doing. Let's put processes around those to where you can get them off your plate, not have to think about it that much there, and it just happens. Maybe for that matter, we can even go as far as automating some of it, but definitely get it to where you don't have to spend time doing what you don't like doing and what you're not good at anyways.
And I think this is why most creative agencies struggle on the profit side, is because all of these processes and money is like oil and water to them. It just doesn't mix well. And those that learn how to mix them are the ones that the most. Any closing wisdom for our audience?
Now, I always like falling back just to I think it's Albert Einstein's quotes where I got it, but basically saying always make things as simple as possible, but not too simple. And that's, to me, that's the biggest thing. Is so many times we overcomplicate processes, we overcomplicate business. Like, it really doesn't have to be that way. Any and all the tools I teach, nothing's rocket science. It's just basic, plain business practices. And when you put it all together there to really build your system at that point, that's the whole idea, is just gaining simplicity, gaining clarity in the business. I think you made the comment early on. At that point, it's just a whole lot more fun. It's whether, I was talking with somebody earlier, is like, yeah, I typically work with about 80 days out of a year, like 80 out of 365 to run a fully successful business right there. I guarantee he's got that business simplified. He's got it very clear. Understands exactly what's going on there, so that it's kind of one of the things I always run is like, as a business owner, you should be able to go sit on a beach somewhere, no phone, no laptop, have the waiter bring you a piece of paper, a card, and you should completely understand what the state is of your business, if there's any issues, anything like that. That's a clear business where I understand what's going on. I don't have to do all this other stuff. And that's where you want to be, or where you need to be as a business owner, is get to that point where I can go take a vacation for a week or two and the wheels are not going to fall off the bus at that point.
And that's a great place to be as a business owner.
Absolutely.
If people would like to learn more about your services and find you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Oh, everything's really through our website. It's just Admentus, ADMENTUS.com. Lots of information up there. Honestly, just a button right there on the front page. Schedule a call. I'm always happy to talk with business owners, things like that. And then there is a link off of there as well for our podcast as well, where we're just talking with usually early entrepreneurs just about their success stories and their challenges. Because I always look at it and say, nobody's ever an expert at this kind of thing, but there's most likely somebody that's a step or two behind you, kind of a thing, that might be able to learn something or pick something up there. So always got those kind of episodes out there. I think we're at 50, 60 something odd business owners we've talked to over here the last year or so. Always adding to that. So tons of information, tons of resources. But yeah, for sure. Just reach out and give me a call.
And I'll put that link in the show notes to make it easy for everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jeff.
Thank you for the time.
I love the 4 Ps. And at the core is the right people in the right seat with the right skills. And this is what most people get wrong. And they take the longest to fix. It's really a drag, and it can take a massive mental toll on you. That's why you have to have a strong foundation before you start, and the ability to be flexible and quick while growing. Also, measure the right performance factors on the finance side and have an open and honest conversations about expectations with your lenders so that they support your growth and they don't pull your funding. Remember, you don't need more resources, you need to be more resourceful. We focus on the bottom line. If you want a done-for-you service, you can have me as your Chief Profitability Officer. Because you have your zone of genius and want to spend your time doing what you love. I only work with a handful of clients, so they get my full attention. I work with business owners who have or are growing to $500,000 to $5 million in revenue. You can use the scheduling link in the show notes to get on my calendar for a good fit conversation to see if I'm the right person to support you and how I can help you. If you want to learn about living the life of your dreams, check out my other podcast, Richer Soul. As we close out, let's repeat the mantra. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Have an abundant and profitable week.